Welcome to SorWil Solutions, where we talk about what's going on in our community. I'm Joe Wilson, the president and CEO of SorWil Technology Solutions, and today my special guest is Matt Beat, aka Mr. Beat.
That's right.
How did you become Mr. Beat? Just out of curiosity.
Well, it's customary when you're a teacher for your students to call you Mr. Insert surname here. So I guess that's how. And then I started my channel like while I was teaching. And so I now I'm stuck with it. People don't even call me by my first name anymore, even if they know me.
Everybody just refers to you as Mr. Beat.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the other guy, Mr. Beast, who...
and I got confused too, I'll admit.
Yeah. I mean, it's a net positive for my channel, so I can't complain about it too much.
Okay. For those of our viewers who may not be familiar with Mr. Beat, can you kind of tell us a little bit about your background and where you come from and how you got into podcasting and things you're involved with?
Yeah, I used to be in journalism. Like my first degree at the University of Kansas was radio, TV. Yeah. So I always loved making videos, and but I got out of that and I went back to school to become a teacher. And one of my other passions, of course, is history and geography, economics. And so, I became a social studies teacher, and I actually got my degree at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. So came back to Kansas. I taught in the Blue Valley District for many years, and then Tonganoxie, everything from middle school, like as low as 7th grade, all the way up to 12th grade, government, geography, economics, AP, U.S. history, American history. That's kind of my favorite, actually, is American history.
Sure.
And so, the videos, I was just doing it for my students in the classroom. It was never meant to be something that anyone other than my students saw.
Okay.
And you can really tell this if you go back and watch my earliest videos, like that I posted in 2011, 2012.
Okay.
It's like, it's clear that I'm just trying to make stuff that's typically more boring for students engaging by being goofy and just trying to like break it down in a more simplified manner. So, but there was a series of events throughout the years that made my channel grow. I always point out my first series that did well with my non-students, like people just watching my videos for fun, was my presidential elections in American history series. That's how I say it. So I did a video about every single presidential election chronologically beginning in 2015. And then I finished the 2012 election video right before Election Day 2016. And since I've made 2016, 2020, 2024, that series did really well with people just watching for fun. So that was a big aha moment for me. And then the other aha moment, of course, came during the pandemic, which is when you started this podcast. Yeah, like you realize a lot of people are now just consuming everything that way. And also a lot of students were stuck at home and their teachers would provide them YouTube videos. And so my YouTube videos happen to be recommended to a lot of teachers by that point and shown to students. And that's when I realized, oh, wow, I can make more money just doing this now instead of just teaching in the classroom. And I love teaching in 2021, so it's been over 4 years now.
Okay.
And Mrs. Beat helps me full time. We've been doing this. It's kind of crazy because at any moment I'm expecting to go back to the classroom. But I'm enjoying the ride. And I'm still a teacher. Like I just have a little bit bigger classroom these days.
You have over 1 million subscribers?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, it's quite the milestone.
It's crazy. Like, but the thing is, a lot of my viewers are not American. Like,
really?
I would only say, last I looked at it, it was like 65% are American. So that means that's a lot. 35% are international. They just want to learn about our country, which is pretty cool.
Do you remember when you crossed that 1 million subscriber threshold? How far into it was it?
Yeah, it was last year. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they
just
gave
last year.
A giant plaque. And we had a little get together with the friends and family because like there's not a lot of people, especially around here in Kansas, that do what I do.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things too. Like when I do go somewhere else, and like California, there's a ton of YouTubers and influencers, is what they call them out there, and they're just like, why don't you come out here? I'm like, no, I like Kansas. My family's there, my friends are there. Yeah, so I'm sticking around here.
That's awesome. I recently, as I started to tell you before we started here, watched some of your videos, and The one that I really found interesting was how to determine where you lean on the political spectrum. And you kind of went through taking some of those political tests. You fall into kind of the middle libertarian centrist. How would you describe yourself politically?
Yeah, that's a good way to like left leaning libertarian.
Uh
Like
huh.
most of my life, I've been distrustful of just the government,
Sure.
when really the government's just ordinary people like us. But yeah, like generally, it's when you're talking about taxpayer dollars, I think I'm much more cynical and skeptical about. Okay, what I pay a lot in taxes. You need to be scrutinized a lot for how you spend that. But at the same time, yeah, like I feel like progress is always good, and I'm very open to many reforms, and that's why people call me a liberal or leftist, whatever. Like all these labels essentially become meaningless at a certain point. And I think it just comes down to like, oh, what's your team? The thing is, I never really had a team. I've always been um, independent, unaffiliated, in here in Kansas on the
On paper.
yeah. So I was like, obviously, I've been very more outspoken against Republicans lately, um, but mainly it's just one guy.
Sure.
Yeah, like most Republicans, actually, I have no problem with.
There was a time when it was kind of a badge of honor to be a Republican, and I talked to a lot of people who say, they ascribe to the Reagan Republicanism, where it was more gentlemanly. His best friend obviously was a Democrat. They worked across the aisle a lot, and today it's completely different. We've almost gotten into this mob mentality. Why do you think that is?
Well, I made a video about that. Yeah, like I think there's a few reasons. One thing is the social media has made it so that it's a lot easier to find your people, your tribe. And so you're just, once you find your tribe or tribes, then you kind of stick with them. And then you also kind of get stuck in these echo chambers, people just constantly telling you what you want to hear, the feedback loop. And then once you find other people that are not in your tribe, you're just like, you're crazy. Who the heck is
Hmm.
this guy? And but also, like, I think the problem with social media companies and all media is the fact that they need high arousal emotions in order to make money. And so, like, getting people angry primarily is the way to do that. They're not going to focus on things that unite people generally. They
Hmm.
might occasionally have like a token, like positive story to make us feel good, but no, people are going to click on what makes them angry. And so, yeah, they make money. I think one of the most rebellious things you can do now, actually, if you want to like bring people together, is just do what we're doing now, meeting in
Sure.
real life and talking through things.
Uh huh.
There's other reasons too why we're divided. I mean, you could even say economics, which I know you have some economics questions
Yeah.
related, like the fact that I think social mobility has been declining for many decades now. The wealth inequality is just a problem that's not getting any better. So I think that also makes it so people are more vulnerable in terms of becoming more radicalized with their
Sure.
beliefs. Yeah.
But when we get into these different pockets, that stops like our brain from critically thinking on topics, and we just want people who agree with us. It seems like when I was growing up, the idea was to critically think everything, scrutinize everything, and always to try to continue to learn. But it seems like we've really gotten away with that, and we just want to hang out with people who have our same views, and it seems like that's really really boring.
It's a lot of work too to critically think. Like you have to exercise your brain, and I think that's why it's a process. I mean, everybody wants quick answers. They want shortcuts,
Hmm.
especially in a high paced, fast paced world we live in. It's just easier to. We got so much stuff to worry about that it's nice to automatically have. Oh, there's a team that's already there for me. I don't even have to think; they think for me. Um, yeah, so I think that's also part of the problem is it's a lot of work.
I think it's really scary when we get to that point where we allow others to think for us. I've had people say, we're headed towards some type of major event that's going to, both sides are going to pop. I mean, it's not self-sustaining for both sides to be so angry at each other all the time. At some point, it's going to burst, and that it could lead to something physical, some type of physical altercation. What do you think that's a possibility?
I agree. I hope it's not like some kind of violent revolution, but I do think there will be some kind of revolution happening in the near future. Um, my hope is that it's going to be people get offline. and they touch grass, as the kids say.
Hmm.
And because that's the root of it, I really is. I firmly believe that a lot of the hate that we see is rooted in the fact that we are trapped to these devices. We're just constantly scrolling. We're just constantly like, um, I think it's just, we're constantly stressed out because of it. And I think a lot of younger people, especially, are starting to rebel against that. If they are on their phone, they're in private servers,
Hmm.
Discord, they're in group texts. They've retreated away from these kind of more mainstream social media platforms. And I think that's a good thing, actually,
Hmm.
because what good has it really done? Like, other than you could say that it's brought some marginalized communities together. Like, say you're somebody who's transgender and your whole life and you feel like you don't fit in with your local community, but then you go online, you're like, oh, there's somebody else just like me. That was like the promise of the internet and social
Yes.
media. But now it's just like you, when you go online, it's like you've already found your people. Now you're looking to go to war with other tribes, other different groups of type of people. So
If you look at history through the mid 1900s on through the 70s, I mean, those were violent times of change. Really, I mean the Vietnam War, the Korean War, the views that people had. I mean, soldiers came back from Vietnam; they were spat upon. I am concerned that we might be moving towards that, and it seems like the administration has become very authoritarian, and that is really pushing us to that. I mean, people are becoming scared. They're seeing this as Nazi Germany. Do you see any correlation to that?
a little bit, yeah. I mean, we're definitely on a path towards authoritarianism. The only other president in American history who has been more authoritarian than President Trump is Woodrow Wilson, in my view. Most people hate Woodrow Wilson that watch my channel, so I'm not like. But I think the difference with Trump, though, is he actually has like a cult behind him. Woodrow Wilson didn't have a cult,
Hmm.
and so the fact that you have tens of millions of people who will literally just like whatever he says is gospel. That to me is the scary part because, he could just, which kind of makes me, I wish people would tell him, hey, we need universal health care or something like, because then all of a sudden his followers would be like, oh yeah, universal health care. Yeah. 'Cause, I mean, that's the thing. Like it's such a rare phenomenon in American history where you had, I mean, the closest thing we had before Trump in terms of cult following was, and I don't use that word loosely,
Sure.
cult. Like look up what the definition of cult is. If you're listening, you're skeptical. It's not a cult. Yes, it is. But John F. Kennedy had a
Hmm.
kind of a cult-like following, but there's been nothing like this. And so he knows he has that kind of power. Whatever he says is the way it is. And so I feel like that's why it's particularly dangerous because what if he wakes up one morning and he realizes that he hates this particular group and he's just going to use the military to attack them? He's already done that with a lot of immigrants, as we've seen. So it's a scary time.
I'm a little disturbed by John Bolton was a big critic of his after serving in his administration. Recently, they've gone into his house to look for records and things. That to me is really what's scary. If you speak out, now all of a sudden somebody's coming to your house to see if you're legit or not, if you're committing crimes.
Yeah, and there's been a chilling effect. So a lot of people, I think, that would otherwise criticize the administration have not done so. And even like, yeah, a lot of mainstream media outlets have really changed how they talk about him. Um, Kind of ironically, the reason why he rose to power in 2015, 2016 was because of them, because they focused on him so much. Like we live in an attention economy. So whoever gets the most attention, whether it's positive or negative, gets power, and that's another sad thing. What I mentioned earlier, like the attention economy has to collapse for this revolution to happen that unites us again. So, unfortunately, though, we also rely on the attention economy. We need people to listen to your podcast. So,
That's true. That's true.
I'll say something outrageous for you.
Universal healthcare, huge topic. A lot of people say that it doesn't work. Let's kind of start there. What are your thoughts on universal healthcare? I've spoken to doctors who say that Canada, I believe, has universal healthcare, and that people will come here to get private healthcare versus waiting there for universal healthcare. Talk a little bit about that. And my wife, I'm going to shout out my wife right now. She is very for universal health care. She thinks it's going to solve all the problems. I'm not sold, but go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, there's waiting times here. If you want to see a specialist in the United States, it's just about as bad as seeing a specialist in Canada. I think there's no perfect solution, but I think the we've had a libertarian think tank. I think it was the Cato Institute. Maybe it was one of the other ones that actually looked at the costs of it. And it actually, if you had some kind of universal health coverage, it would actually save the government, the taxpayer money. So to me, that's like when we think about universal health care, often people get defensive because they're like, well, I don't want government to run my health care. And I totally understand that.
Sure.
We don't want government really running anything.
That's right.
But one of the few things that government's good at, in my view, is spending our money. Like they can distribute it to where it needs to go. And in that case, yeah, like I think we shouldn't have to worry about, we shouldn't be in danger of going bankrupt because of healthcare costs. But I think at the root of a lot of it is the leeches that kind of, the health insurance companies. They come in and maybe you've talked to some of them on your podcast. I don't know, but
I have not yet.
I'm sure they're good people that work for these companies, but system-wide, we're talking about a very evil thing, like the fact that people live or die based on their decision. Like they can still, I know we have Obamacare and they can't completely just reject funding, but like there's plenty of things that me and my family have tried to get healthcare, and the insurance companies said, nope, we're not going to pay for that. And that's it. It's healthcare. A lot of that stuff is healthcare. It will help us live. And so to me, like, I'm pro-life.
Sure.
I think healthcare is a right, not a privilege. And I think every human being deserves healthcare. Just like every human being deserves a shelter, access to clean drinking water, clean air. These are all things I thought we all agreed on. But whenever you just start to say that everything needs to be privatized, no. And I know we're going to talk about prisons too. I think that's another thing. Like there's some things that should be in the bucket we call public goods. We're a mixed economy. That doesn't mean like I think socialism generally does not work very well unless you're talking like one factory perhaps. But even then, like we're a mixed, like we have markets here. But that doesn't mean everything has to be privatized. So I feel like I'm talking too much, so I'll stop there.
When we talk about universal healthcare, one of the knocks, there's two knocks that I hear of. First is that we limit how much hospitals can charge for procedures, thereby limiting how much doctors can make. So if there's a limit on that and I can't go out and make 7 figures, do I really want to be a doctor then? So then do we go into a shortage of doctors? And secondly, if it comes to you've got cancer, there's nothing I can do to save you. So we're just gonna let you pass. Thank you very much for your service to our country, whatever. But there's no procedure we can do to save you, and we're not gonna spend that money on you. We're gonna spend it elsewhere. I've heard both of those knocks.
Plus innovation, like the United States leads the world with medical innovation still. So yeah, like if we do have some kind of universal healthcare that could hurt. I agree. Like those are all valid points. I would say like that's again why the solutions are not perfect. There would have to be something to supplement like doctors because they have this problem in the UK right now. Doctors are not paid enough over there. I think that you can have other programs in place to perhaps alleviate that. As far as like usually when we talk about not rejecting like somebody who needs healthcare, that's not the doctor making that decision. It's not even the hospital often making that decision. It's the health insurance companies that say, we're not going to pay for that. So that to me is the problem. Like the root of all the problems are the leeches who don't really offer that much value. Health insurance companies don't really offer that, especially when they're like, like we paid $24,000 last year to our health insurance company. We didn't really use any of that. Like they just got $24,000 of our money.
For nothing.
Yeah. So I feel like there could be a better system than that. I'm sure you can agree with that.
I definitely agree with that. As a business, we tried to offer our staff free healthcare to them and their families. The first year we were at $5,000. Year 2 went over 10, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
The cost of increase versus the cost of revenue we're bringing in is just not sustainable. unfortunately. And as a business, you got to bring in money and try to make sure that you're paying people enough. And it's been a struggle. And this year we actually had to call that off and give 50% for families and try to cover the employees to try to help defray some of that cost.
Mm.
So that's part of the struggle, especially when you're in a small business.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, let's talk about private prisons.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've heard about CoreCivic. It was a private prison. The Biden administration went in and closed all the private prisons. It was at that time the federal holding facility for the U.S. Marshals, run by Corrections Corporation of America (CCA). CoreCivic now has been directed or trying to open it up as an ICE facility. People or immigrants that are detained will be here for 60 days or less and then shipped off elsewhere, either deported or elsewhere to prison, whatever. The promise is that they won't be released on the streets here. What's really interesting about the subject is a year ago, the city and the county engaged in this being an ICE facility. Um, and then everybody, all the Republicans, the conservatives were up in arms that they're going to release them on the streets. We're going to have gangsters all over the place. MS-13 is going to be everywhere. And those political officials that even entertained the idea were browbeaten relentlessly. Flip to today, in today's political climate, those people that were against it before are now completely for it. And their argument is, well, now we know Trump's not going to release those people onto the streets. And so therefore it's okay. It's completely crazy to me that you go from both sides of the subject. But your stance on private prisons and now possibly being an ICE facility.
Yeah, it's just the fact that the incentives are warped whenever you have something like this privatized. I used to actually think that prisons should be private privatized, and many. I mean, it's still very common in this country. But I kind of changed my mind when I thought more deeply about it. Like this is one of those again, kind of what I was talking about earlier with healthcare. This is one of those public good things because if you have privatized prisons in general, um, then why? Well, you got to think about why do they exist? Why do they exist? Um, they, ex- they exist to make money.
Sure.
Like I mean, we're like every business, and so there's just some things that shouldn't be exist to make money. That's what it comes down to me. I know that sounds a little maybe naive and oversimplified, but that's I mean, there is some value to like having some competition, but I just think that if you have these situations like we've seen, like these public-private partnerships in particular, I've read that they don't even have any prisoners.
So they shut down. They shut down
Before they shut down,
before they shut down, they did have.
they were paying their workers without any prisoners. Is that right?
I don't believe that's accurate.
Oh, okay.
I think what had happened is they didn't have enough workers. And so in talking with some of the opponents to it, they were still billing for the hours, even though people weren't working those hours.
Okay.
And so there was some concern there that there may have been, I don't know that that's accurate. I talked to a gentleman who is a known opponent to the prison, and his concern is oversight and the way the officers were treated in the past and the violence that occurred within there and the lack of transparency.
Oh.
Today, if we flip to the other side of the issue, the argument is they don't, since they were closed down for 2 years, new zoning regulations are requiring them to have a special use permit. And so both sides are arguing whether that's accurate or not. They're continuing to hire right now with no inmates, and so that they can be ready to go
That's
the
what I
minute this
read.
gets
Okay.
through. Um, but for our economy, our local economy, there have been some numbers thrown around as much as $1 million in the first year to the city, with 150 or 300,000 going to the police department as a way to accommodate some of the concerns that they have.
Hmm.
We have a large group of Catholics in this area, the Sisters of Charity. They're very opposed to this, just on the human side of it, and the way that they're concerned these inmates would be treated, or not even inmates, but immigrants. So the community is really split in half. The economic benefit that we could get from this, 'cause I believe the city just voted on a new budget. They had to exceed revenue neutral. I think the budget's going up because there's not enough sales tax coming in. Um, so there's that argument, but then there's the moral argument. So how do you try to navigate that, especially for somebody who's going to be a city commissioner or is on the city commission? How do you navigate that so you're not picking winners and losers?
I think it's important to zoom out with these situations because every single town in this country just depends on growth, like population growth. And with population growth means productivity growth. And so, yeah, that's what the primary concern of every community is. Are we going to be creating jobs? Are we going to be bringing in more tax revenue? And sadly, that supersedes everything else often. And even if, like, oh, yeah, this prison's going to bring in some jobs, that's a short term thing. Like we don't think about the ripple effects. We don't think about planting seeds that will later grow into trees. Um, Trees is a great analogy because when you grow a tree, like we planted a couple trees in our yard, they're not going to be fully grown probably until I'm dead. Okay, so but I didn't grow. Like we don't think of we have such short term thinking in all of our communities because we're just impatient generally. Human beings are. And so, yeah, like I think that's also why we're just like, okay, well, same thing with military bases. We don't want our military base to shut down, even though, like, okay, you think about big picture, why do we have all these military bases around the world? Um, well, I don't know, like, or I guess we're an empire, okay. But like, we don't think, we need to think long term about things. And the other issue kind of hinted at this is I think a huge issue, and that's corporate welfare. I made a video about this as well. Corporate welfare is one issue that actually unites Republicans and Democrats and independents. It's everybody agrees that when it comes to tax breaks, subsidies, and special treatment, exemptions from regulations, like yeah, giant companies, giant firms, corporations, whatever you want to call them, too big to fail. They get special treatment. That's not the, small business owners like yourself get screwed over time and time again. And we don't see any politician at any level of government really doing anything to reverse that because the incentives are not there. Like, I mean, the fact is, if you are a community leader around here, you have to work with the big dogs in town. Otherwise, the community's screwed. What are you going to do? Who else are you going to go to? You could try to like form some kind of co-op with all the small business owners, and there's organizations, of course. But when it comes down to it, you can't compete with a multinational corporation.
Yeah.
And I always bring up the example of Dollar General in every small town in Kansas. Like that's a corporation. That's and every mom and pop shop that used to exist there before the Dollar General. People don't like it, but where else are they going to go? It's the only place in town where they can afford to buy food.
Yeah.
So we're all trapped in this system, and these require huge systemic changes. And I think that has to come at the federal government level. So everything that, yeah, like you at the local level, every problem that we think of, like it's just a microcosm of a much bigger systemic problem.
The thing that we hear, especially at the local level, is there's too much. And I went to the city commission meeting last night. There's too much stuff in this budget. You need to cut it and live by your means. But we can't cut our way to prosperity, and we can't tax our way to prosperity. So the thing that we have to do, especially in this community, and I think that we're struggling with, is how do you grow the community in a way that you can not tax us to death and not cut services?
Well, I saw you mention like the questions that you sent beforehand, like two things maybe. Well, one of the things in particular, Georgism, land value tax. Heck yeah, that's. I'm serious. Like a lot of young people too are getting excited about these ideas, and they're starting to be tested around the world. But the two big reforms I see that could solve a lot of these issues that don't have to be top down, bottom up, could be a land value tax instead of a property tax, or at least somewhat to supplement a like lower property taxes and then maybe like raise land value tax. So we can explain what that means. But the other thing I think is, you need to flip instead of a trickle down economy, you need a trickle up economy, which I know that's a buzz phrase now. But what that just means is like people best know how to spend their own money. So
Sure.
getting money directly to people versus a middleman, a leech, that's a parasite that will just not, they'll mismanage that money. So this means stuff like a universal basic income. Does that mean like it has to be a lot of money? No, like it could be, we could start out like how Alaska has right now, where they have an oil dividend every year. Every citizen in Alaska gets a few $1,000s every year automatically, and they live off that. And every time we've done studies on universal basic income, the people have spent their money primarily on necessities, on stuff they need, because people know how to spend their own money generally. They're not going to just go out and spend it on gambling or booze. So yeah, but should we go into Georgism?
Yeah,
Because I know you had a,
Yeah, no, go ahead.
yeah, like I made a video about this as well, but I'm not an expert about it. I encourage everyone to like check it out on their own. But Georgism is named after a guy named Henry George, who was he wasn't even an economist. He started out as just a writer, a journalist, but he kind of got into economics, and he was around in the late 1800s. And his whole thing was like, yeah, the way we tax people is wrong. Like we tax their income, like their hard-earned money. They work hard to earn that money, and that's the first thing we think of is taking from them. We tax their property. Like you can own a house for 50 years and every year, you're still getting taxed for something you've owned for 50 years. Are you kidding me? So
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, like
People are like, I'm renting my house. It's paid off, but I'm still renting my house.
Still paying taxes. And so it essentially makes us slaves permanently. There are things that you can tax that aren't so bad. I think sin taxes, as we call them, like taxes on things that are negative for us. So like a tax on cigarettes, I think is something most people would agree is reasonable. You could say, okay, wealth tax or capital gains tax, but then there's rich people find ways out of that. So then that just leaves Henry George's idea. What about a single value land tax? And the idea is that you don't tax the property on the land, you just tax the land itself, because the land was here before us and it will be there long after humans exist. It's natural. It's part of the earth. How can we just claim property as ours anyway? It's ridiculous. Like you look at ancient cultures, a lot of them are like, they didn't even understand you could just own a piece of land. Like you could just have a piece of paper that says, I own that land, and everyone else has to agree. It's kind of absurd the more you think about it. But anyway, that's the system we have. So yeah, I think it is like that's the quickest way to wealth is acquiring assets, property. Well, okay, you're incentivized to improve that land if you develop it, if you build a business on it and you hire people to work at that business. But if you don't do anything with that land, like our current system, you're incentivized actually to not do anything with it. If you drive south of here, south and east of here in Kansas City, Kansas, you will drive by lots of giant vacant lots owned by giant companies who have no incentive to develop that land because they're not paying hardly any property taxes. So if you develop that land, that means you're going to have to pay a lot more in taxes. So as a land tax just means the burden goes on like, oh, you actually, if you're just hoarding all this land, you actually are going to be more liable to pay more taxes. And then therefore it switches the incentive, like it makes it so that, oh, maybe I should develop it. And then if you develop it, you're still paying the same amount of taxes because you're only paying taxes on the land itself, if that makes sense. Hopefully I explained it okay.
Going back to the sin tax, the state used to, and the county still collect it, the local ad valorem tax is essentially the sin tax. The state stopped paying that out to the counties as a way to help reduce property taxes. I think for Leavenworth County, it was something like $4 million. I want to say they stopped it back in the early 90s. They never took it off the books until this last year. But that was the goal, was the state would give the county $4 million. It would help alleviate property taxes so that they could not do that. And now they've essentially eliminated it. But there was the goal that tax would help.
Yeah.
The county is still collecting it. State's still getting it. The other thing that there was a bill, and I don't think it ever got out of committee to remove or possibly remove the nonprofit designation from a number of businesses, organizations, and by doing that, the state could collect that money, and then in the long term, over the next 10 years, eliminate property tax completely.
Wow.
I think Dave Beeler, one of our representatives, was kind of leading that charge. He's the one that kind of told me about that. It never, once again, never got out of committee, never got very far. But is that sustainable? Is that even plausible?
That's a great question. Yeah, I don't know if it is, but I think if we at least work towards that direction, I think we'd all be better off. I mean, we can't expect perfect solutions, but we do know the problems right now are huge. So why not try? Why not try it for like one zip code,
Mm-hmm.
or one neighborhood? That's what we've been doing with universal basic income. And every time they try it, it's like, oh, this actually worked out better than we thought it would. So yeah, I just think that we need to test these things out. We're so entrenched in the current system that I get that it's scary but also there's I don't mean to sound conspiratorial here, but I mean the people that have all the assets don't want this to change because they benefit from it. Like they're hoarding all these assets, and then most of us don't have these same opportunities. They're shutting out competition. That's what's happening. Every society this happens throughout history. Like people in the society, they gain wealth, and then they get older, and they're like, well, they don't want to lose that wealth, and there's young people rising up that's just threatening to take it and compete
Mhm.
with them. And so what do? They use the government to help them keep their wealth, and so they get the government to pass laws. Usually, I mean, we think back the Gilded Age,
Yep.
like the trusts that were formed. Yeah, there were lots of small startups that try to compete with Rockefeller, but
Mhm.
either bottom up or he worked with the government to shut out the competition. Those are the two things they do. And yeah, I think that's the root of all the problems, actually, the asset hoarding that we see. And I'm a pro market guy. We
And
don't have competition.
we don't have enough competition, at least.
Yeah, we don't have enough. That's the key word. Yeah, we have some.
Let's go back to your teaching. One of the things that I hear a lot, and I think you see on the far right, is there's concern that teachers are indoctrinating students into the LGBTQ community,
Yeah.
or into the socialist community, or into the liberal community, however you want to phrase it. But they're indoctrinating our children. Do you think that's really happening?
I don't think so. When
How many
when-
kids did you indoctrinate?
I was going to say, like, a typical student, I saw them maybe a total of 3 hours a week or something, maybe 4 hours, unless they were lucky to have me twice for two classes. But yeah, like compare that to how much time they spend everywhere else. Like they're with their parents for most of their lives. I think parents, you can make an argument they indoctrinate their kids.
Sure.
But I mean, yeah, like also we have very strict standards as far as what we teach.
Yeah.
I can't just like go. I can't just like go to the front of every day talk about Georgism and how land value tax is awesome. So yeah, like I think that that's not really happening. It's just a moral panic.
So what about, I mean, teachers aren't giving sex changes in the classroom or anything?
No, not that I'm aware of. I know I didn't do that. So
It's so funny to me because I think what the issue really is you get some students who don't feel like they can talk to their parents, and they find a teacher or a mentor they identify with, and they're struggling to understand what's going on with them or themselves, or how they're viewing the world, and so they confide in a teacher. And I think that's what the problem is I think parents are jealous, or whatever you say. And so they're upset that the student's confiding in a teacher and not in a parent.
Hmm.
Would you agree with that?
yeah, to a certain extent, I could see that. Also, though, I think people just fear change, and so
Mhm.
like it is. There was a lot of social change in the 2010s, in particular. Now that I can kind of reflect on it, we're kind of living in a reactionary time now, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, 2010s there was progress. I mean, you had the legalization of same-sex marriage, big deal. and then just the rise of just visibility for the transgender community in particular. And so, yeah, that freaked some people out, like some typically insecure people, like because change is scary. Yeah, they're hiding under their covers, like.
Sure. What about school curriculum? Do you think that and what are your thoughts on Common Core?
Oh yeah, I actually thought Common Core was pretty good, especially compared to what was before. I mean, it's more skills based, which to me is more important than just having them memorize random facts. It also like there were more cross curricular opportunities. The only problem I had, like when I was teaching, as far as like what I know, a trend that I noticed is that often social studies education got pushed to the back burner, and math and science, STEM got prioritized. And I think we're kind of starting to see the effects of that now. You're a lot of people that don't understand basic functions of government, grown-ups, people that were never actually. Did you know that you don't even have to take a government class in order to graduate high school in some states?
I think it's disappointing.
It's crazy. Yeah. So, yeah, when we wonder, like, why don't kids know the, Bill of Rights anymore? Like, well, you know, it's just wasn't a priority in many schools or school districts across the country for the last 20, 30 years. I saw it firsthand. I gave up class time a whole week to do science and math testing, standardized state testing.
Uh-huh.
And I had to give up my lessons the whole week because they're like, well, it's just social studies. You can just take the test during social studies class. I will never
Okay.
forget that.
Wow.
Yeah.
One of the programs around here is the CT Career Technical Education. There's a big symposium trying to find ways for students to get skills that they can use in the workforce, give them the opportunity to learn about different careers, maybe not have to go to college, but go into an apprenticeship, but really try to get some skills and be ready to go to the next level so we can keep those students here and working in this community, hopefully. But one of the issues is that the schools trying to find a way for the schools to make that work and get the students. And what's really unique about this community is all the schools would offer something different,
Hmm.
so that whatever the school was good at, they would offer that. And so, Leavenworth doesn't do much with FFA. It was all about automotives. And Lansing, I think Tonganoxie is more FFA.
Yeah.
And so, really trying to find ways to take advantage of that. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, it's amazing. I think that's one of the few bright spots that we see now. Like that trend is because it wasn't like that when I started out teaching in 2010. It was, but yeah, every district seems to be on board with that now, because especially the fact that there's a shortage of a lot of these jobs. They can't find enough qualified candidates, so it's a great thing, I think.
Did a lot of the students that you worked with when they graduated, they go off to other places and just move away?
Yeah. I mean, I was always not too far from Kansas City, but yeah, like most of them, Kansas City, Tonganoxie. Actually, that was the most recent high school I taught at, and yeah, you mentioned FFA. It's huge there.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really
But you
cool
got the
program.
fairground right there.
Yeah, that helps too. But and of course, there's the pipeline to K State, which is great. But yeah, I think it's great that I mean the automotive department there too. I was so impressed to see, and the boys who came in. I would say boys. It was mostly boys that otherwise would not be excited to be at school. That was like the highlight of their day. So that's what it's all about right there.
There's a big push now to get rid of diversity, equity, inclusion, and everything, especially in our school system. Lansing Public Schools is currently debating the merit of that. The Attorney General has said we're removing that. Where do you stand on DEI? Is it a good thing, a bad thing?
I think it's generally a good thing. I think have to have as diverse group of people as possible, especially like workforce. Like uh, when I was a manager in the private sector, before I was a teacher, I was a valet manager. The more diverse team I had, the stronger it was. So, and I'm not just talking about ethnic groups. I'm talking about just all characteristics you can think of. So, I think a lot of that stuff, the backlash now is somewhat superficial to me. You could have a deeper discussion about multiculturalism and
Okay.
identity politics. Yeah, like I think there's some legitimate criticism about multiculturalism because whenever you have too much emphasis on the group or the group identity versus the individual, that can be a problem. Yeah, you want to have a balance of that. Um, and then same with identity politics. Like if you're making every choice based on your group identity, then yeah, you're going to have a flawed perspective often because I just think it's more complicated than that. We're multifaceted individuals. You can't just lump me in one category, for
Mhm.
example. So, like, yeah, there are, I think, legitimate criticisms. The DEI thing, though, like, it seems more superficial. Like, what does that even mean? A lot of times, I think a lot of times you said Lansing got rid
Mhm.
of the what
They're arguing, the school board is arguing right now, because the state attorney general wants them to get rid of all DEI initiatives per orders of the president,
so like a DEI initiative, like trying to hire more minorities, basically.
providing preference to minority. What I think the
Okay.
topic is providing preferences to minorities or other groups and not supporting people based on merit.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times though, I don't know. I think that's there's a good argument for that. I think a lot of times people are gonna maybe be more aware of that anyway. Maybe we don't need those programs anymore. Um, I think most people understand that it doesn't matter what your background is. If you're the most qualified for the job, then yeah. Uh,
But isn't our natural state, don't we all have a bias to hire people that look like us and act like us, and white people in the United States are the majority, white men. So does DEI balance that out and force us to look? I mean, if you look in the NFL, they have to interview minority head coaches before they can make a hire.
oh yeah,
Um, aren't we somewhat biased into hiring people that look like us? And it doesn't have to be
yeah,
white people. I mean, you can go
we
to
are.
any other culture
Yeah.
and they're biased into hiring their own before they hire somebody outside. So DEI really works both ways.
See, I guess I don't have strong opinions about this because I think this is a wedge issue, just like abortion and many other social issues. I think the root of most of our problems in society are economic. And so when you keep bringing this up, I'm just like, oh, yeah, you kind of have a good point. I might just end up walking out of here agreeing with you 100%. Seriously. Like, I just think that these culture war issues are just tiresome. And I think it's more important to talk about, like, the fact that we can't afford to buy groceries ever, or Gen Z can't buy a house ever ever. Like a whole generation got screwed over. And it's just crazy to me.
And you're completely right, because affordable housing now is, if my daughter wants to go and buy a house, it's going to be probably 300,000 if she wants to buy a decent house.
Plus the interest rates
Plus the
now.
interest rates
Yeah,
are
it's
over
insane.
7%.
And even
You
here,
know,
we're supposed to be a good cost of living in Kansas City, but not anymore even here.
how do we get back to what's affordable?
Yeah, that's why I mean, what we were talking about earlier, I think I did it. I brought it back to the economic. I did it. Yes. The heck with these culture war issues. But no, I think more money in more people's pockets directly. And yeah, government, again, their main thing that they're decent at is giving people money. Um, they're also good at collecting our money, but I digress. And so, yeah, some kind of universal basic income. I know there's a YIMBY movement too. Then when we talk about housing. Are you a fan of YIMBYism?
Um,
What's your thoughts on that?
I struggle with that, and we came up. I mean, that's been a huge topic around here, and when we're looking giving incentives to developers and things, I think that there's a fight on both sides. So I don't really have an opinion. So I will digress and let you provide your opinion on that.
Yeah, it's related to what I said earlier. When you have people that benefited from the system early on, and then they've had these benefits for a long time, they don't want to just give it up. So you have a lot of asset holders. And actually, my wife and I, we own a house. We were lucked out because we bought a house during the Great Recession when interest rates were low and prices were low. So I think elder millennials are the last ones to actually take advantage of that. But yeah, like if we're not incentivized to like support, like say they next to us, right next to our house, they're going to build an apartment complex because they're trying to make housing more affordable. Well, that's going to lower the value of our home. at the same time, I guess that'd be good for lower property taxes. But you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
so like these incentive structures are all out of whack. You have to balance that, no doubt. But generally, I think it should be easier to build. And what does that actually look like? I think it depends on the city. I know that's a cop out answer, but I do think that there needs to be less hoops to jump through. Generally, less middlemen, less like in Lawrence where we live. It definitely very difficult. Like we live in a new construction house, and there's so many hoops they had to jump through. We saw the whole process. Like you couldn't do this until this happened, and then you can do that until that. I mean, there's a certain point where we can just like combine some of these things. So
What Lansing tried to do, so the state has RHIDs or residential housing incentive districts. Are you familiar with that?
I think when you get sent the question, that we looked it up. Yeah.
So Lansing was going to have a development that requested RHID money. And so basically it was a 20-year property tax abatement for the developer so that he could in turn put in the infrastructure in the development.
Hmm.
The sewers, the roads, all that, those things that don't make the developer money, but it does guarantee him some income for the development. And so I think there was a huge shout out that by the community because people were for it, people were against it. City of Lansing has built 7 homes in the last 7 years.
What?
City of Basel has built 700 homes in that same time frame.
Wow.
Leavenworth City has built 28. So obviously these two cities are not growing nearly as fast. And so the city finally got a developer to come in. He wanted some incentives to be able to build there. And the county eventually voted against it. So with RHIDs in the property tax abatement, the city has to vote for it, the school has to vote for it, and the county has to vote for it before it gets passed. And so it got all the way to the county, got voted against because they felt like there was a lot of concern over the county having to provide more services and not being paid for those services for almost 20 years.
I get it.
But that provides something on the horizon because more rooftops. This is the chicken and egg discussion,
Yeah.
right? Does more rooftops bring in more business or does more business bring in more rooftops?
I think these are all band-aid solutions anyway. I think that, again, what I said earlier, you got to zoom out and look at, okay, why do we have so few developers in every community? There's only a handful of developers in Lawrence, and everybody knows their names. They have all the money, and so we're kind of at their mercy. And then they can go to the city commission and get whatever they want. They get whatever tax break they want. So I think that's the bigger problem that needs to be tackled. How do we get more people to even become developers? Because then they wouldn't have to all these special this special treatment and subsidized by the taxpayer. I think that has to be a federal level situation because there's not a community that's not affected by those things. I mean, I think it is more unique in the Midwest because Midwest is not growing as much as the Sun Belt. And especially I know there's a question about brain drain, but like Western Kansas, most of the towns are actually shrinking. They're screwed. So, but there's going to have to be some kind of federal intervention. That's all there is to it. And that's the only part of the government that can just create money. And so,
fair. I'm going to get into a little bit on some of the current politics, specifically the Epstein situation. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, yeah. Like I've always been for full transparency. And it is kind of crazy there was a lot of Trump supporters who were upset that he didn't release the files and like, oh, yeah, it is nothing. It's a Democrat hoax. It's like, wow, it really is a cult. They're like, because now many of them are just going along with it. Blows my mind. Like, although not all of them are, I will say, like, there's some YouTubers in particular that are just keep bringing up and are having their doubts about the president now. But yeah, I think it just shows you how tribal we are.
What do you think
Sadly.
about Trump's attorney meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell and then her being transferred to a much leaner prison, and all of a sudden now her story has changed and there's no list. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's pretty sus. I would say she's a horrible person, like a horrible human being, did horrible things. And yeah, Epstein was too, and Trump was friends with him. So like, yeah, like I don't have any friends that do horrible things like that.
That you know of.
That I know of. Yeah, like so I just think that it just blows my mind how people don't even care. Uh how can you not care about this? I think now that said, I do realize it's also something that the Democratic Party has they're just trying to, this is like a perfect weapon for them to because they didn't say anything about the Epstein files much when Kamala Harris was running for president. They didn't really bring it up. And maybe that was because Bill Clinton was also one of those names. I don't know. So yeah,
Visited the island 28 times.
yeah, I know. So I just say take them all down. Yeah,
It's so funny how, I mean, no matter which side you're on, it's always the other side that's doing it. But yet, and a good example of this is we talk about the gerrymandering that's going on in Texas. So then California responds, and all of a sudden now California is evil. They're illegal. It's wrong to do it, but it was okay for Texas to do it. But then I read recently that Texas, it went before an appellate court, and Texas was ordered to redistrict based on that appellate court decision, which wasn't made known. I mean, nobody made it known until recently.
I didn't know that either. Yeah, I mean, even before Texas, I mean, like gerrymandering has been a problem since the beginning of our republic. So if you look at the North Carolina map after 2010, that's the most notorious. North Carolina has the worst record of gerrymandering of all the states. So this is not a new issue, and it's going to get worse. Which maybe that's a good thing. Maybe this accelerationism that's happening right now because maybe both sides will finally realize we need to actually pass a law to ban gerrymandering, political gerrymandering. Racial gerrymandering is already illegal. The Supreme Court said that was the case in the 1990s. But yeah, gerrymandering is one of those things that's like pretty much everybody agrees it's a bad thing, and yet it's just getting worse and worse now.
You mentioned the Supreme Court, knowing that it's somewhat stacked. Can we trust the Supreme Court now?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I generally, I wrote a whole book about the Supreme Court. I have a lot of videos about the Supreme Court, and I'm generally pretty defensive of them because I think it's the smartest branch of government. And I think that most of them are principled. Maybe not Clarence Thomas, but most of the other ones. And yeah, I think that actually, generally, they like this current group of 9 wants to limit their own power. And I like that. They pass the buck on a lot of things like, oh, well, that should be a state deciding on that issue or whatever. However, yeah, like when it does come down to like big decisions, they tend to be more partisan, and that's not good. There are wild cards on there like Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, even Neil Gorsuch sometimes. So yeah, like I'm not as cynical about them as most people are.
But what power really do they have? I mean, so they say, you can't do X, Y, or Z, but how does that get carried out?
Yeah, the executive branch, right?
And if the executive branch is the problem, then how do we? I mean, so we have 3 branches. The concept was they each control each other. But what we're seeing today is the executive really has more power than the other 2.
Yeah, that's sad but true. I think that for so long we've taken for granted that the fact that because we are a republic first and foremost, our judicial system, our criminal justice system has been just amazing. Like I know it has problems, but the fact that we have such a robust system in place that does generally protect people, not always. I mean, there's obviously a lot of minorities that have been negatively affected by the criminal justice system in particular. But generally, overall, I think the justice system has been pretty rock solid. And this is the first time I feel like in American history where we're just like, oh, like a third of Supreme Court, or not Supreme Court, federal court decisions, the Trump administration, I think, has just ignored. The Wall Street Journal, I think, reported on this.
Yep.
Is at least a third of so that to me, I mean, that's no other president in American history has done that.
So the Supreme Court told the FBI to go arrest the president. You think Kash Patel is going to arrest the president?
No. Yeah, he seems like a corrupt guy. Yeah, the guy who was like Epstein files now, and then once he's in power, no, we're not going to release them. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to get to know Mr. Beat on a little bit more of a personal level.
Oh yeah.
And so we go with our rapid fire questions. Normally, I give you 4 out of the 10. I ask the 5th, but this time we're going to go through all 10 just because I think it's going to be interesting to hear some of your answers.
Awesome.
If you weren't cursed to teach social studies for the rest of your life, what would you be doing?
I would either be a park ranger or an urban planner. I've thought about this a lot
Ooh.
actually already. Yeah.
Urban planner, that's got to be a hard job.
I mean, but I just love watching all those urbanism channels right now. Like, this is how I design a city. I used to play SimCity a lot when I was a kid.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
As we look at the presidential election, do you have any thoughts on the next presidential election, on political candidates that you think should run for office?
If it happens.
There's another big question. We don't really know what's going to happen there.
I do think J.D. Vance is the front runner for the Republicans. And also, I think he actually disagrees with Trump on a lot of things, but he just doesn't say it because he knows better. So people who are worried about
Do
Vance...
you fault him for being a loyal follower then?
Every other Republican's doing it. So I think he's just playing the game. So I think we shouldn't make assumptions about him. He can end up being more moderate. On the Democratic side, I actually think that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would be an amazing candidate because, like, we need a populist person on the left, like, that's actually better at communicating than Bernie Sanders was. A big reason why a lot of people left the Democratic Party was I think they abandoned, they shut out Bernie Sanders, and I think there's potentially millions of people they could draw back into the Democratic Party if somebody like AOC ran. Of course, now Gavin Newsom's getting a lot of attention, but maybe it doesn't matter because he's really good with the messaging as well. I think that's what the key, though. They have to be good at communication. And some of the otherwise good candidates, like you could say Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky. I don't know. Like, I've seen him speak. Actually, saw him in person once. He's okay, but you need somebody with not only a lot of riz, but just they know how to like work the attention economy to their favor. We're still in the attention economy, unfortunately, and Gavin Newsom and AOC are good at working in that system.
What do you think about Gavin Newsom and his approach to mirroring Trump and the way he sends his messages?
I think it's hilarious. That's all I have to say. It's hilarious. It cracks me up.
Of all the schools you taught at, which was your favorite?
Tonganoxie High School. Yeah, for sure. I was there 6 years, and no disrespect to the Blue Valley schools I was at, but I just felt like it was a good mix of kids there.
Okay. What was the hardest interaction you had with a parent?
I mean, there were very few. Parents are usually amazing and very trustworthy of teachers. I know it kind of it doesn't seem that way when you look at some school board meetings, but yeah, like I did have a long conversation one time with a parent who was concerned that we were teaching about Islam in a world history class. And I had to explain to them that the standards say that we teach all the major world religions, and we're not trying to teach them.
Not favoring any.
Yeah. We're just like giving information. And by the end of the conversation, they actually completely understood. So once you just kind of reason it out with them, yeah, it's fine.
What's your favorite historical movie?
Oh, I should have thought about this ahead of time. Dang it. There's so many good ones. Actually, I've been Spotlight. I've really been digging a lot. I watched it again the other day. I was born and raised very strict Catholic, so maybe that's why. And also, my background is a journalist, so I have any journalism historical movie I'm a fan of.
What historical event do you think was the most underappreciated?
Specific event or era?
Either or.
I think that generally the most relevant to today that's not brought up enough is the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age phrase comes from Mark Twain, just like everything else. Apparently, every quote ever said was Mark Twain. But he was a lot
of good quotes.
Yeah, he's a good communicator, but that just means that everything looks like it's in gold, but underneath it's not. Well, I think that's the times we live in now.
Yeah.
I think that there's an AI bubble. I think that, even look at the freaking White House and on the wall, there's like gold plated stuff on, it's not really gold, but it's all gold plated. How symbolic is that? So, yeah, we're living in like the Gilded Age 2.0 in my view. Like I've studied that period quite a bit, read a lot about, actually just read a book about the 1890s. I'm going to make it a video about how we're living in the 1890s. In many ways, there's a lot of parallels, like a response to what was going on with the trusts and the trust busting that they wanted was this huge populist movement. And a lot of it actually originated in Kansas and Nebraska. So farmers, and they joined the factory workers in the cities. So I think we're due for something like to happen very soon, where you see a lot of people from the country unite with people, the city folk, the country folk and city folk unite and have some kind of populist movement. I think we're already kind of seeing it a little bit.
Best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think just kind of knowing, what is it, the saying, the courage to accept things you cannot change, and then also the courage. Well, I'm messing up the quote.
Sounds like the Serenity Prayer.
The Serenity Prayer is what it is. Yes, my dad actually had a picture of that on the wall for the longest time, and he used to tell it to me all the time. But yeah, like the courage to know when you can change something, or no, the courage to change something when you can. Look this up later. And then
Matt, you're butchering it, buddy. You're butchering
do you know it. Can you do it?
No, I can't.
Accept the things I cannot change. Courage, change the things that can.
And the wisdom to know the
difference. Okay.
All right.
Just
well done.
Dub that on my I really butchered that, but I like it a lot. Yeah.
Last question's on here. What do you think happens in the next election? Does Trump run again?
In 2028? I think he might try. Yeah, I used to.
How does he get around it?
Well, he would probably just have Vance prop him up as and he would be like the running mate or something. I don't know. He'd find some loophole. And the sad thing is, a lot of people would go along with it. So it's not up to him, though. It's up to us. So we have to just keep educating people about the Constitution to prevent that from happening. But no, I think the economy is probably not going to do very well by that point. I think that the tariffs. I have a video about tariffs as well. We're already going to see the tariffs are not going to go so well, and I think that we'll be in a recession possibly into 2028. So
I wanted to get into tariffs. I want to get into AI.
Maybe another time.
An hour and 15 minutes in, which is the longest podcast that we've ever done.
Wow.
So thank you, everybody, for watching. This is Matt Beat, Mr. Beat. Check out his channel. You want to give them your link and how they can watch and subscribe?
Yeah, just search up Mr. Beat online. You might see Mr. Beast show up. Just scroll down a little bit, and there I am.
Thanks for tuning in. We enjoy having you on the show. Thank you so much for being here. I got to thank Dustin for getting you on the show. When he was so excited when he told me that you were going to be on the show. Big fan. He tried to get me to go to one of your events, and I missed it. And now I'm really upset that I did, because you've been a fantastic guest. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much.